Hi, everyone. This is Will, and hopefully you're doing well today. Thank you very much for joining me. I am a political economist and velocity banking advocate as I've been looking at it for the past 2 years. Today, I'll be talking about Navy Federal, cash advance, velocity banking, bank transfers, and convenience checks, and how I've used them for the past year to pay down some of my debt. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. All right, so this is day 391 of me using velocity banking and trying to understand this phenomenon. As a political economist, I've tried to go to the web and see if any other economists or political scientists or academic is looking at velocity banking. And as of today, I have not. So I started more than a year ago to use it and put out information on velocity banking from that perspective. I am not an attorney. I'm not a public accountant. I'm just someone that's been using velocity banking and letting you know my real world experience. Part one, looking at Navy Federal's cash advance, balance transfer, and convenience check. Navy Federal has been the card that I started with to try to understand this phenomena of velocity banking. I've used other cards with other commercial banks also. So my definition of velocity banking is a method of using a line of credit, someone else's money, loans, bills, mortgage to credit as a strategy to reduce debt and or build wealth within a capitalist and democratic society. Velocity banking. Hopefully at the end of this presentation, you know that I have used a line of credit, credit cards, and home equity line of credit to set up bills for velocity banking and pay down debt and build wealth. You would also know what velocity banking looks like in the real world as I have practiced it, not as entertainment, but real world experience. So traditionally before velocity banking, I was getting my paycheck, putting it into the bank, paying bills, paying debt, and whatever percentage went to my bills and debt and whatever remains as a cash flow, after all debts and credits have been paid off, it will stay in the bank in general and be eaten up by fees. Then when I started looking at velocity banking, I started a new method, getting my paycheck, putting it into the bank, then paying my debts by placing as much of my cash from my job onto one credit card, paying a percentage of those bills, and what remains was sitting on the credit card and to be used whenever necessary. I pulled money out of a savings account, savings, emergency fund, and I put it all on a debt that I wanted to pay down. That initial debt was a Wells Fargo card at 7,550. I was over the limit, but I was doing everything that I had in my paychecks and pulled things from out of my bank account. So that was part one in terms of how I got started in velocity banking as a political economist, trying to look at this from an academic perspective, but also in a personal perspective. Now we're going to look at part two, Navy Federals, how to use cash advance, balance transfers, and convenience checks. A brief overview of Navy Federal cash advance in general policy and not so much the balance transfer or the convenience checks. I'm not going to really into detail, but just wanted to give you an overview of what they saw as cash advance. And I put a link inside of the box that you can view more detail. So just very quickly, this is Navy Federal presentation of cash advance from a credit card. This is the link. Access it 131.25. So this on first page, it kind of talks about how it works, but I just want to draw your attention to a few things. They're saying 2 to 5% of the transaction amount. Navy Federal has not charged me a fee up to this point to pull money off of my credit card. and bring it over to use it for velocity banking. The average cash advance annual percentage rate is 24.7%, as they say on their website, according to according to Wallet Hub. However, when I've been using it, it's averaged 18, not average 18%, but it was 18% each time I use it. There is no grace period for repayment. As soon as I borrowed a cash advance, took it from my credit card, put it into the bank, I immediately started gaining interest on that money. Even if I did it at 6 o'clock p.m. that particular day, they still was charging you interest on that particular day in terms of repaying it. An additional thing that has, whenever you take the money cash advance off of the credit card, what I do is take the cash advance off of the credit card first, and then I can make additional charges. If I have additional purchases already on the credit card, say the limit is 10,000, and I've purchased $2,000 worth of goods and services, then I have a balance on the credit card of available credit of $8,000. But that $8,000 also reduces the amount of cash advance that's available to you. So I normally pull the cash advance off first before I touch making purchases on the card. Okay, these are also some of the pros and cons, and again, you read for yourself that I've highlighted that they mentioned on the website. Again, usually no grace period. Typically, the interest rate is higher than purchases, yes. So if I make a purchase of a hot dog, or I make purchases of a gas, that purchase is at a lower percentage rate than the cash advance that I've taken. And you see that in before. There's generally a cash advance fee. No, Navy Federal has not been charging a fee in general when I do a cash advance. Cap for cash advance, and I think this is more just generally overview of cash advance. A cap for cash advance may be well below your credit limit, which is true. Yes, my credit limit on the card that I'm working on is 6,200, and my cash advance is 30% of that 6,200, which is 1,860. This is the bottom line that they also would tell you. Credit card advances are a convenient way to get cash. It has definitely been convenient for me just going to the ATM. Your typical pay extra fee, there's no extra fees that they have, particularly on their particular one. And unlike credit card purchase, interest rate fees usually start adding, yes, immediately in general. So again, when you read aspects of it by that link, it's being in general, but I found Navy Federal to be pretty good. Part 3, how have I been doing it in the real world? Now, this is my real world experience. This is not for entertainment purposes. This is how I've used the money as a political economist to see how this is working from an academic perspective and then a real world perspective of my typical job receiving a W-2 from my employer. So I'm straddling the fence and trying to get researchers involved in looking at velocity banking and see how they can see it work, and then the real world in terms of me on the ground buying groceries, going out to the restaurant, paying my rent, how velocity banking works along with cash advance, balance transfer, and convenience checks, primarily from the Navy Federal experience, although I have used other commercial banks this year. How are cash advance, balance transfers, and using the real world? Just discussed that. Okay, so this is the summary of my credit card that I use for velocity banking with Navy Federal from 2022. So all of the data, if not most of the data, is being pulled from my summary statement. In 2024, you can see that I started to look at how this was being done. I hadn't paid any interest on the cash advance because I was just starting. But at the beginning, any purchase I made on this particular card was at 18%, balance transfers was at 18%, and cash advance was at 18%. So they all were at 18%. Now, as I went through the year for 2024, you can see that I paid a total of $346.42 in total interest on this particular credit card. As we got close to the end of 2024, they began to lower interest rate, and this was happening with the credit card. So this was fascinating to me because as a political economist, I look at the interaction between government, politics, the state, and the economy and capitalist societies. So as you can see earlier, the purchases were at 18%. Now it's at 16%. Balance transfers 16.15%, and cash advance 18%. So this was going toward the end of the year, and the previous slide was at the beginning of the year. So as the Feds lowered the interest rates, also the rates for my credit card came down. Now, this is going into 2025, and again, the interest rate started to drop even more. So now my purchases are at 15.9%. My balance transfers are at 15.9%, and cash advances 17.9%. Now, when I started using cash advances, they were at 18%. Now the cash advance is at 17.9%. And I've also used balance transfers. So this year now, I'm gonna try to only concentrate on balance transfers and convenience checks and not the cash advance. So at the cash advance, I was going to the ATM, pulling money from the ATM, or going online and pulling money, and that was a cash advance, and it was at 18%. Now what I'm doing is writing myself a check for the full amount of $18.60. Then I go to one of my commercial banks, and cash that check of $18.60, and then put it into the commercial bank to transfer it to the HELOC. So it's a kind of a lot of moving parts in general until I get a better HELOC. But from here on out, I will be using the balance transfers to write myself a check and operate off 15.99% versus the 18%. How much did it cost me to implement cash advance, balance transfer, and convenience check strategy, or what I call CAB TCC, with Navy Federal Credit Union in 2024? Let's see how much it cost me. All right, so this is some of the cash advances and convenience checks, and they kind of made a change, so they labeled them differently. But in 2024, I did a total of $13,095.64 in cash advance. Now, I think it's a little higher because I did cash advance every month. So I'm gonna go back and review, because I'm seeing August and September, and October is not there, but I think I did cash advances from there. But just from this information, I used convenience checks and cash advance. So where you see $18.60, that was me doing an online transfer or ATM. The $374 is where I use a check and pay the bill. So I did that a couple of times. Now, I also went back to look at, okay, how much interest did I pay on those balance transfer, convenience checks, and cash advance? And these are some of the months for 2024 from my summary that I was able to gather. You can see at the bottom where the total for the interest came out to be $184.79. Now, if you remember from the earlier slide, let's see, try to go back to the earlier slide. My total interest for the year was $346. So I'm going to subtract $346 of my total interest that I paid on the card with the $184.79. So here you can see I paid $346.42 total for all interest, cash advance, transfers, purchases. Of that, I paid 184 for the CAB TC strategy that I'm implementing with Velocity Banking, which meant $161.63 was in actual purchases. For interest. Okay, and now we're looking at part 4, Velocity Banking. But let me go back. So in general, the most important thing that I wanted to show was that I paid $346.42 on interest on the credit card for the entire month. But of that, $184.79 was from interest on using the CAB TC strategy. Now that $13,000 that I talked about earlier here, and again, it's a little bit more, went directly toward the HELOC. And that helped me to lower the interest, reduce the time onto the HELOC that I'm using, and save some money. Now, just very quickly, for many of you who had not started with me earlier when I got the HELOC, so this is another part, but I started Velocity Banking with a credit card, then I eventually went on to a line of credit, and that line of credit wiped out $46,000 or $47,000 on average, put it on to the HELOC, and then I started paying it down. Of that 4690, the total was 50,500. I had to pay $1,735 in a point to get the HELOC, and then there was about $625 in other costs, and they provided me $1,236.60 at closing. But that was all rolled into the $50,500 in HELOC. So I started actually paying interest on a cash advance that they gave me. All right, that was just that. These are some of the things that were paid off with the HELOC, one mortgage. So that some people also talk about first lien HELOCs, and that's what I did right here. I paid off the mortgage, got a first lien kind of like HELOC, and I'm operating it like that. It paid off a credit card, it paid off a business card, it paid off another credit card, and one Navy Federal pledge loan. All right, so that is it. If you're interested in working with me and my team with the CAB TCC strategy and using cash advance, balance transfers, convenience checks, I'll be more than happy to work with you and see how we can help you. I was able to reduce my debt by approximately $20,000 to $25,000 last year using this particular strategy at 18%, which is lower than all of my commercial credit cards. And now that it's at 15.9% interest, I should save even more in going forward with the CAB TC strategy. So I'm very happy with Velocity Banking. I'm very happy with what I'm doing. And even going further, once I'm able to get a 0% credit card to do it. Right now, still paying some interest, and that's going to be down the line. But I just wanted to share this with you. So thank you very much for stopping by with me. If you have any questions, my email, telephone number is located in the bottom. So please give me a call. All right. Thank you very much. You have a great day. Bye-bye, everyone.